C in the hypothetical syllogism only ever functions as a consequence. It is only B, the letter B, in the hypothetical syllogism that functions both as the consequence and the antecedent. It's the fact that it functions. It has this duality in function. That it is both, think about this now, right? It is both the antecedent and consequence. Before I go on, I wanted to go back to one of the initial comments that people said in the initial videos when this first started many hours ago was, how did we come about this? This originates in observation. And the question is, when in your life might you have seen something that functioned in the real world as both the consequence of, but the antecedent for? I'll say that again. When in your life, in the real world, and there's plenty of times, have you seen something function as the consequence of, but the antecedent for? Right? Newton might determine this, might describe this in terms of sort of the laws of thermodynamics, or the transference of energy or what have you, right? In a very sort of causally related sense. There is a sense in which you can, but that causal relation is a temporal, right? Physics describes, at least at that level, describes sort of this transference of energy, preservation of what have you, in terms of temporality. We can talk about this in terms of logic, both in terms of temporality, meaning stopwatch, but also in terms of sequence, which really transcends time. Not in the spooky transcendence, but it doesn't pertain to time. Obviously, if we have 3 dominoes set up, and they are equal distance apart, then this domino is going to knock this domino over, and this domino is going to knock this domino over, and so on. This domino will only ever serve as an antecedent. It will only ever serve as an antecedent, right? Aristotle takes this idea and sort of appropriates this concept to the uncaused cause, right? God as the prime mover. God is the thing that caused, the necessary antecedent for the existence of X, but nothing having conditioned the existence of God. Okay, right? But you get the idea, right? This domino pushes, and I would say that my force pushed it over, blah, 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 I understand that. But just so that you understand, let's not go crazy. Philosophy will tend to put you way in the hole. The idea is, this domino is only ever going to function with respect to these 3 dominoes as an antecedent. Right? It's only ever going to occupy this position. This domino is only going to ever occupy the position of consequence. So, now watch how this rule appropriates directly to this example. This is proof that the logic, I mean, you can get even deeper, right? The logic is conditioned by the truths of reality, right? This domino, Jason, is A. It is A. This is domino A, undeniably. And this domino is domino C, and that is also undeniable. Why am I spending so much time on this? Because I want you to not just parrot or mimic the rules, but I want you to truly be able to see the rules in motion in the world. 3 cars have a head-on sort of back-to-back collision coming to a light. This, right, you can explain that in terms of physics, for sure. But you can also explain it in terms of logic. The very unique domino is this one. That's what I try to be. I want to be the embodiment of B. I want to be the link, right? That's my aspiration in life. The idea is that this domino is the consequence of this domino falling, right? A affects B. It would be effects, right? A affects B, right? A affects B. It causes B to drop. But insofar as B drops, it becomes the antecedent cause. It becomes the reason why C falls. Therefore, if A falls, C falls, duh. Why? Because B is what's key, right? B is both the antecedent, the consequence and the antecedent, and that's why we want to put so much emphasis on that. So now we have a really rigorous understanding of how sort of this rule applies, because we have taken the time to analyze its parts, think about the relationship of each part to the truths of reality, and located those parts in the truths of reality, given an example which a 4-year-old could understand of how those parts interrelate, and now we can apply this truth, which is now hopefully self-evident, to the construction of argument, incidentally, but I think primarily to the construction of a very logical mind, right? Which is what it's all about, right? It's this really, you know, I'm not going to go into my overall objectives in the world, but it really is about the construction and habituation of rational thinking in individual people. And if you choose to be irrational, and if you choose to renounce fact and reason, that's totally your prerogative. But the idea is there are many, many people who are in search of accessibility to this type of thinking. And making it accessible is where I come in, and it's not an easy thing to do, but the whole point is to make it accessible. And hopefully, I mean, that has to be as clear as it can possibly be. So I've explained the functions of part 2 and 3 and such. Okay, so step 1, linking. Let me cap my pen, my marker. I have to remember to buy markers today. Remember, the purpose is applying this methodology to the construction of argument is precisely to make you the most effective in defending, persuading, critiquing, and denying argument, right? The whole idea is that you use these rules in order to be a better thinker, to write better. You should immediately notice the similarities between hypothetical syllogism, modus ponens, and modus tollens. Namely, they all begin with exactly the same manner. That is, if A, then B. Modus started with ponens. Modus ponens, if A, then B. If I jump, I will fall. I jump, therefore I fall. Okay. Modus tollens. I forget the argument that I gave, right? If A happens, then B happens, right? B doesn't happen, therefore A doesn't happen, okay? If A, then B. Now, hypothetical syllogism. If A happens, B happens. If B happens, C happens. Therefore, if A happens, C happens, right? That if A, then B is the foundation for tollens, ponens, and hypothetical syllogism. So there is an interrelation of sort of this initial premise, if you will, in each of these rules of inference that I've done so far. And obviously I constructed this in this order for a reason. If you think in terms of percentages, of the 5 rules of inference presented in this lecture, 3 of them, basically 60% of them, of the rules directly pertain to, top of page 11, the conditional claim, right? It's a conditional, right? And I've spent enough time talking about the conditional. The conditional is either a sequential or temporal relation of either ideas or facts, and it assumes the form if, T-H-E-N, right? If, then, right? Then is, T-H-E-N is an account of time, or an account of sequence. Then is not sequential or temporal, it's more comparative, right? It's a comparative claim. T-H-A-N is comparative, whereas T-H-E-N is more a descriptive account of the transition of thought or the transition of time. So overwhelmingly, much of the rhetorical stances you will make at this initial phase, either orally or written argumentation, will assume a conditional stance. Most of what you are going to find yourself doing for a while, I mean, unless you try to get to, like, you know, expert level. And even the experts don't do it at this level. I would imagine, I know for a fact that all of the political candidates have very, very professional, amazing speechwriters. And these speechwriters can write an amazing speech. And the speech might be to persuade, you know, the community to, you know, support some bill or vote for me or what have you. Despite the fact that the candidates or the president or whoever, anyone who has a speechwriter, the speechwriters themselves, the fact that the speechwriter can write a good speech is one thing, right? It's one thing to be able to write a good speech. It's another thing to be able to know why what you've written is a good speech and justify it based in logic. That's a whole nother level. Now, imagine someone who is already a good speechwriter having access to this type of information. It would be insane, right? Because now there is, I mean, if you choose to take it to that level, and to be honest with you, I think political speech at that level might lose the population because it just becomes too, it sounds very, very dense and very, very technical. But if you're arguing with people that understand this, and you want to